Hi, and welcome to the Candidates Podcast. I'm John Newton, and I'm here with Val Delp, and we're going to be talking a little bit today about some of the things that she feels about at the Wilson School Board. So, Val, you want to take a minute and kind of introduce yourself to everybody, and we can get started.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, John, for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah. So, first and foremost, I'm a mother of two young children, soon to be 5-year-old and 3-year-old. So, part of my reasoning behind wanting to, get involved at this level is just wanting to have, kind of play a bigger role in their future education at Wilson. I also have a couple of nieces that are currently in the district, so I'm also doing this on their behalf as well. My background is I'm a former educator. I taught both at the elementary school level as well as early childhood education. So I do have, some understanding and experience in education and knowing kind of what goes on day to day and what teachers deal with, with having a classroom full of kids. I know it can be very challenging and very rewarding at the same time. So I think it's important to have some experience with that if you're going to be on a school board, really understanding the way education works. And then also, now the last 12 years, I've been working as a financial advisor. Have a practice with my husband, and so I think I have some value to add there with working on the school budget and trying to see ways that we can maybe help the district more efficiently use the funds that we have coming in. So.
That sounds good. That sounds. One of the things I did want to talk about is what made you decide to run for school board, especially with the younger kids. You're getting involved way earlier than most people do. And I feel like you just kind of gave me that answer with, the whole family as well as, we need more involved people. Is there any other reason that made you kind of be like, I'm going to do this?
Yeah. It was just something like I felt like on my heart that I wanted to do. And, if you would have asked me like 3 years ago if I would ever run for any sort of public office, I would have laughed.
So this is not a long-term life goal. You're not checking anything off your bucket list.
Not at all. This was never on my 5-year, 10-year plan or anything. I never would have seen myself doing something like this, but just with things going on with public education across the nation, I just really felt in my heart that this was something that I'm supposed to be doing, and so that's why I'm here.
Well, I appreciate you doing that. So many times people aren't willing to make changes to their plans, and when the fact that you saw something that you felt you needed to get involved, I really do appreciate you stepping up and doing that.
Yeah, thank you.
What are some of the top issues that you do see at Wilson?
Mm-hmm. I think one thing that's going to be a challenge for the next several years, if not longer, is just trying to attract teachers to the positions that we have. There has been statewide a bit of a shortage with teachers, and that's probably nationwide too, not just here in Pennsylvania. So just trying to attract people to our district to fill the positions and the needs that we have is going to be a big challenge, and we're going to have to come up with ways to compete with neighboring districts in order to get good quality people here to work with our students. So I think that's a big challenge. The other thing I would say is just discipline. In talking with teachers and staff that work at Wilson now, that seems to be a recurring theme. Just that it's become very difficult in some cases to be able to actually work with the students that are there and want to learn because of having to deal with discipline issues on a daily basis. And I think we have to get a little bit stronger on our discipline policy and following through with that. So those would be the two major things. I know you have some other questions there that are going to kind of go on the other topics.
They all kind of tie together. So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we're going to look into the future, and you just won the election. You're one of the new board members. Day one, what's the first thing you would like to see happen differently? What was something to do differently as a board?
Yep. So I think there's two things on the top of my mind. First would be I'd like to improve the way we communicate with the public. I don't necessarily think it's working really well with the format that we have currently with the board meetings. I understand like there's an agenda, we need to get things done, we need to vote on, things every 2 weeks. However, a lot of times what I've felt personally, doing public comment, and I know other community members have said as well, is that we feel like we don't have enough time to express, what it is we're trying to get across. 3 minutes is very difficult. When I start to write, like I could write, a 20-minute speech. So it's very hard for me to cut it down to 3 minutes. And I also a lot of times feel like it's not really a conversation. It is, we're talking at the board members, and then the board members are talking at the community, but it's not really like, let's sit down and have a discussion and come up with solutions together. So I would love to see some sort of change in format, and I realize we probably can't do that every board meeting, but if there's some sort of really major decision coming down the line, I would love to see more of like a town hall where we're actually like having a back and forth conversation. So that would be my first thing. The other thing I would say, kind of along the same lines, is I would love to put it out there to all the teachers, staff, administration, students, families. Like, I want to meet with everyone that is willing, and I want to understand from your perspective, what is Wilson doing really well? How do we duplicate that across other buildings if it's, not working in other places? What are some things that are challenges for you from your perspective, and do you have any ideas on how we can improve those things?
I like the idea of sitting down because, this all started with me asking you, what do you think they're doing that they need to improve on? And your point of, I want to sit down to anybody that wants to come in and talk to me and hear what they think, is a really good point, because what you're living through is totally different than what a middle school parent's living through, or a high school parent, or parents with kids that have different needs and challenges. And I think that's a really good way to do it. And the town hall might be easier because you can do it in a larger group and kind of work together. I saw someone the other day online made a comment speaking about the school boards, and I didn't know the First Amendment had a 3-minute limit. And it just kind of made me laugh, because that's kind of how it does feel. You go up, you talk, they nod if they're paying attention, and then you move on to the next person with their 3 minutes. And the idea of having some opportunities for some back and forth and some true engagement, really, what we're doing now isn't working, so something different it can't hurt.
Yeah.
It can't hurt.
Exactly. And I mean, it feels like there's not a willingness right now for that to happen, to go to that next step. And I want to be that person that is going to bridge that gap and say, listen, I'm here to actually try and understand where you're coming from. And then even if in the end we don't necessarily see eye to eye 100%, I've at least made the effort, and I've heard you out, and now I understand why you feel the way you do. Which
can only help you even down the road with even other decisions. If you can't come up with a solution right now, it puts something in. It gives you knowledge as to what the people are going through for future conversations and future votes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think everybody has something to learn from each other. And again, that's where I feel like there hasn't been necessarily a willingness from some of the current board members to, learn from other people's perspectives, or, I think we can all work together. We can come up with solutions together if everyone's willing.
And going back to, you had commented earlier about, you didn't use the word transparency, but we all know the word transparency, is something that's important. And I've had a couple of conversations with different parents that they see what's going on in other places, and they don't know what's going on because they're not given information. And that transparency, if you open it up and you give the parents all the details and they know what's going on about the important things, it might help calm them down a little bit and give them some peace of mind that they don't need to worry about the things that they're seeing that are happening in other places throughout the country.
Exactly. Communication in today's world. I mean, I see it in my business too. People appreciate you communicating because, everyone hates calling any number and there's like this auto dialer and you go through all this menu crap just to get to a real person. Like everyone craves that communication. So I think we need to figure out how to do that better.
I definitely understand where you're coming from and have heard that from a couple of other people too. So I think you're heading down the right path there. So we've talked about some of the things. I'd like to kind of get into the actual education. And I moved to Wilson years ago, and my older daughters came to Wilson, and the whole reason I wanted them to come to Wilson was because of the education they were going to get. Mm-hmm. And without a doubt, I knew that's where they had to go to get the best education. And there have been the recent results from the public school report that Wilson has come in the bottom 50%. And I know that's concerning, but I'd like to know how you feel about that with that education background as well as the business background. You kind of see it from both sides.
Yeah. I spoke about this a little bit at the last school board meeting. The Nation's Report Card put out their results from testing they did with 8th graders across the nation. And, on a national level, everybody was down several points in both math and English. And then on Pennsylvania level, kind of similar results. We pretty much fell in line with about the average. But everything is declining. And it's not just, and they even go as far as to talk about how it's across all races, it's across, all locations, it's across all like percentiles when it comes to like skill level of the kids. Even the top performers have declined, as well as the lowest performers. It's across the board. It's a
slide across the board.
Yes. And that to me says that there has to be some common denominator. Like, why is this happening everywhere? It's not just, in one state. It's not just in one county. It's everywhere. So I think we really need to do a deep dive into what is the underlying cause here. Is it a curriculum issue? I don't know how curriculums match across different states and counties and stuff like that, but it's something to look into. Is it partially the discipline issue that's like taking away from education, time for instruction? There could be many, many reasons, and I don't have all the answers, but I think that is a concern, and we have to figure out how we turn the ship around. So
stay the course isn't the right option in your opinion? Okay.
I don't think so, and I personally don't think it's being talked about enough. I haven't heard from what little I'm privy to at this point. Right. I haven't heard much discussion around that. So that concerns me because the primary goal of a school board should be to make sure that your district is meeting the goals of education for our students.
Yes. Yeah, that's kind of an important part of what they do.
Yes.
Is teaching the kids to get better and prepare them for the next grade and the next grade and then for real life.
Exactly.
And whether they're going to eventually go to go to an education future career path, or they're going to go into a trade school, or they're going to come up with another way to do it. Mm-hmm. Giving them the educational foundation is so important no matter what. And if you're failing them, maybe failing them isn't the right way to put it, but if you're in the bottom 50%, we've got to do something for all of the students to make that better. The kindergartners all the way up to the kids that are getting ready to graduate.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say that Wilson's not doing anything for education. There's a lot of great things that Wilson does with their programs. Like, for example, I love that they do internships once you get into the high school level. We're actually taking an intern on
nice.
Our business. Yep. In a couple of weeks here. So giving them that kind of real world experience before, and this intern's only a junior. So it's early on, which I really like, because I didn't have that personally when I went through elementary school, and I'm not going to date myself, but, but I always thought that was what was wrong. because I had no direction whatsoever. I just knew my parents were saying you have to go to college, and they were kind of steering me in a specific direction, but I didn't know that that's really what I personally wanted to do. But I had nothing to, compare. I didn't have any experience other than working at McDonald's, so I just had no direction. And so I think Wilson does a great job with that. Also looking at the offerings they have at the high school level. There's a lot of different tracks. They can, they have the finance track, which I like that because that's what I do. But it's just really great to see that has changed over the years, and in a good way. And so there are things that Wilson does really well. So I don't want to make it seem like, they're awful 100% on the education piece, but there's always room for improvement.
And sometimes some outsider perspective, some different perspective can help with improvements. And just so the biggest thing I took away from that is, although we're doing a lot of things right in the district, we can't just stay the course on the whole thing. We've got to sit down and look at the big picture when it comes to the actual education part of education.
Absolutely.
Sounds good. One of the things that I do want to talk about a little bit is that the biological boys and biological girls playing in each other's sports, like a biological boy choosing to play a girl's sport. That's something that we've had conversations in the past about, how do we, it's a difficult position. It really is. It's not an easy conversation for anybody. Right. But how do you feel about what we're doing in the district, and what would your thoughts be on continuing down the path that they're headed down?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a very controversial topic, but I think we have to be having conversations about it regardless. My stance on that is, I have a daughter. I also have nieces who are in competitive sports. My daughter has a very competitive nature. She's only 4, but I could see her probably playing some sort of competitive sport at some point. And I just worry about how it doesn't seem really fair to all the girls who have worked so hard to get to the level that they're at, to have opportunities and titles and trophies and awards taken away from them. Yeah, and scholarships taken away from them because of one or two individuals who now believe that they are a different gender and are going to compete against, actual biological females. And I feel like girls and women have fought way too hard and way too long to get to this point to actually be able to have our own competitive sports teams and own safe spaces. And I don't understand why there's no outrage. It feels like there's not that much outrage about this now, and that kind of being taken away at some level. So I don't know what the exact answer is, because I don't want anyone to necessarily feel bad because they're being excluded from something. But I know what we're doing now isn't serving the larger population, the girls in the school district, having to sacrifice some of their rights to safety, to privacy, for a couple of individuals. I don't think that's the answer. I don't think we should be sacrificing the whole for a few.
Makes a lot of sense. It's a good explanation about a difficult subject. So,
Yeah.
And with those things, there's going to be a lot of challenges in doing what you want to do and being on a school board. Mm-hmm. And sitting down and having conversations is something that's important. How do you feel about interacting with people on a board that are on the total opposite side of things? Is that something that, do you see a challenge in being able to work with them, or, how do you feel about that? How would you approach that situation?
Well, my hope is that we'd be able to work together, understanding we may not always agree. I will say I feel like I haven't seen that effort. Knowing that I am running for this position, I haven't seen effort from some of the school board members to try and reach out and, make some sort of connection, or at least like a cordial relationship of some kind.
Not scream at each other or scream at, yeah.
Right. So it doesn't feel very inviting at this point. So it is going to be a challenge. I think it would be better if we would start working on that now, knowing that it's likely that there are going to be different people on the board come November. So my hope is that we can figure it out. I certainly want to be able to be open to talking to people who have different viewpoints and having, adult conversations about it. So time will tell, but I'm willing. So it's really up to the other party to be willing as well.
I appreciate that. The only way you're going to get anywhere, and that's something when I met with Dr. Lockhart the other day, we were doing these interviews and he's like, we need to work together. We need to make compromises. We need to do what's best for the kids together. Mm-hmm. Out of the entire world, all of the people in Wilson School District chose to live in this really small area. Mm-hmm. So no matter what we don't have in common, that's something that's in common, and that's important. Yep. So, exactly. As we've been talking about maybe doing some more of these, but as we're kind of wrapping up this conversation today, is there anything else you'd like to get out there? Is there anything else you'd like to make sure we talk about that our wonderful fans can hear about?
Sure. I guess the only other thing I would add is I know there's a lot of moving parts right now with like additions and construction plans going through. And I understand like some of the needs for those things. I know it's very difficult to grasp the amount of money that is spent on those kinds of things. It just seems like an exorbitant amount of money. So, with myself having a financial background, like I hope to be able to shed a little bit more light on that with the community, and again, offer like maybe some ways to try and save in some areas. Cause it's hard, cause I'm sometimes kind of torn because I see, the need for the facilities to be updated and things like it makes a lot of sense from a standpoint of making things more equal across the district and everything. But then, you have the taxpayers and in my job as a financial advisor, I do work with a lot of the senior citizens in the community, that retirement age, part of the community. So I hear all the time that, we're on a fixed income and the school taxes just keep going up and like, we can't afford this. We're not going to be able to live here anymore. And so that really pulls at me too, to try and work on like keeping things reasonable from a financial standpoint.
And that's a really good point. We get caught up in this, it's the kids, it's the teachers. There's a whole section of this that is voting for you that has nothing to do with kids in the school. And you also have to take their thoughts and cares and opinions into account. That's got to be a bit of a challenge. It
is. And I just don't buy the standpoint that, well, they're not involved in the school district, so they don't matter. And sometimes, that idea is put out there by people on the other side of the things. And I don't think you can say that because they're paying for the education. So we have to listen to them and we have to take their perspectives into consideration. And we have to be mindful of, if they're spending the money on the things that we're doing for the kids.
Right.
So.
And you use the phrase, they're afraid they're going to lose their homes. That's something that we all have to take into consideration. This is the generation that helped take care of us. Mm-hmm. And, we have to take their thoughts and their opinions into account, especially when you're taking their money.
Exactly.
So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Well, I think we're pretty much good for today. It's been great coming in. Thanks for coming in and talking with us. And we will. Thanks for the responsible parents for Wilson School Board for sponsoring this event. And we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. Have a great night.
Thank you.